What is up, everybody? Welcome to the final edition of the live Saturday morning college football show here on RotoGrinders for the 2023 season. We have arrived at conference championship week. We had a couple of games last night, some entertaining football. Washington defeating Oregon to win the Pac-12 championship, cementing their place in the college football playoff. Still plenty to be determined today, however. With the SEC championship, the Big 12 championship, the Big 10 championship, and 5 other games on tap for today. So we've got 8 games. The first time all season we've seen the main slate stretch across all the games on DraftKings. So we've got, identical slates between DraftKings and FanDuel today with the shorter amount of games. Might not take us as long to get through the options since we only have 8 of them, but still figured we'd bring you one more live show here this week. So I am, as usual, Justin Van Zuiden, here to host the show. I've got John Laub alongside. And John, how you doing? Ready for the final week of the season here?
I am, my friend, and I had a great night of sports. I mean, those 2 games last night, if you didn't watch New Mexico State Liberty, that was a really fun game. And the second half of Oregon, Washington, I love. And I'm a UConn fan, so we lost to Kansas, but I had a great night of sports on the television. So I'm excited for another big day today, Justin.
Yeah, sorry, I bet on Kansas last night, so I was rooting against you guys there, but you got lucky if you had Kansas minus 2.5 or minus 3.5 with a couple free throws at the end. I just had the money line, so but that was a good game, and as you mentioned, a couple good college football games as well. New Mexico State and Liberty with an old-fashioned shootout, and then Oregon coming all the way back against Washington, but falling just short again. So I think everyone's kind of underestimated Washington all year long, and they pulled it off yet again. So will be fun to see what they can do in the playoff. All the other spots pretty much still up for grabs. I mean, most people, you're probably not giving Iowa too much of a chance to beat Michigan, but with that defense, you never know. But assuming Michigan wins, they're probably a lock for the playoff. But Florida State, they might be onto their third string quarterback today. That's a discussion we'll have to have. So they're going to have to beat Louisville if they want to get in. Texas still has a chance. You got the SEC championship game where both of those teams have a chance. You're going to have everybody up in arms if Alabama wins that game because, we were talking right before the show, assuming, if depending on what happens in the Texas and Florida State games, there could be a real hubbub if that final spot comes down to Alabama beating Georgia and then Texas, given that Texas beat them head to head. But John, it would be something to see the committee leave the SEC out, and I just don't see that happening.
Oh, Justin, I couldn't agree with you more. There is absolutely no way the winner of the SEC is left out. I mean, it's just the television. I mean, it's just they're the best conference in the nation. They have such a swath of fans across the nation. And I could argue that a one-loss Alabama team might be the best team in the country. I mean, come on, man. If you watch Alabama, they're freaking good. So, yeah, I don't see how they're left out. I think the better question is, Justin, do they put 2 in? Does Georgia and Alabama? I don't think so. But there is a chance that they both end up in the playoffs also.
Yeah, that would make some people real mad. We'll see. I would be surprised if that happens. I think Florida State and Texas would both have to lose for that to have a shot. Then you got the Ohio State fans. I don't know. It's one of the more unique situations here, given that we don't go to the 12-team playoff until next year. But anyway, the good news is it's not up for us to decide that. We can play armchair analysts after the fact and argue about it, as I'm sure people will do no matter what happens. But today we're here to focus on the 8-game DFS slate, which should be an entertaining one as well. All the conference championship games here on the docket. And as usual, we start at quarterback. And this is one of the strange slates. I mean, we got a lot of good defenses today in these conference championships. We don't have a lot of elite quarterback play. A lot of these high-scoring teams that don't play a ton of defense, you just don't have these teams in the conference championship games. Of course, the Oregon-Washington game was last night, so we don't have Bo Nix or Michael Penix. And this is just a weird slate where you don't have a slam dunk top option at quarterback. And right now, you've got, say, 5 guys priced near the top. We've got Milroe and Beck and Ewers all around 15% ownership, all around kind of a modest 20 fantasy point projection. I mean, we kind of get in the mode of, pay up for one of your quarterbacks, but do we want to pay up for one guy today? If so, do we have a favorite of the bunch?
Putting together my lineups today, and I only put together 3 because it's such a condensed slate. I did not go heavy. I got only one big quarterback amongst the 3 in my 3 lineups, and that's Jalen Milroe. And I don't think he's in the best spot. But what I did with Milroe is I like the ceiling because of the rushing upside. Now, it's nasty playing Georgia, right, Justin? We know Georgia's very good against opposing quarterbacks. But if Milroe can get, 60 yards rushing and a touchdown on the ground, I like him there. I'm not sold on Carson Beck's ceiling here, and he's 8.6. So I don't love that. I think he has a nice floor, though. So maybe cash game, but I don't have him. And Ewers, Ewers is too up and down. He's frustrated me all year. I just don't like Ewers in this spot because I think you can run the ball against Oklahoma State. So I don't have Ewers either.
Yeah, I think the running game will be where most people look for some Texas exposure today in that matchup for sure. I don't mind Carson Beck. I think this could potentially be a spot where you see him air it out a little bit more. There are some question marks as far as who's going to be healthy and good to go for them at wide receiver and Bowers at tight end. But, I think that that it could be a spot where maybe we potentially see a ceiling from Carson Beck today, at least maybe a little bit more so than what we have the rest of the year. So, all right. And Milroe, I think, is fine in terms of upside for GPPs as well. All right. If we move down into that next range of quarterbacks, this is where people are kind of going to start to get their exposure. We've got some of the group of 5, the lower conference teams in here. You got the MAC championship game. So we got guys like Finn, UNLV, Boise's on the state. You got Taylor Green, Mayava for UNLV, who's been playing a little bit better lately. If we're going down and fading that top group, do you have a favorite out of this secondary tier?
I would personally like Daquan Finn. I think he has a real high ceiling. If you haven't seen the Toledo quarterback this year, he's good running the football. I do think there's a very good chance he accounts for 3 touchdowns because he could throw for 2 and run for 1. He's definitely being overlooked. We have him at 7% ownership. I think Daquan Finn, now he is a little bit inconsistent, but he's the guy I like with the high ceiling if that offense gets clicking today, my friends.
Yeah, I think, the chalk in here is going to be Mayava, given that he's projected for a little over 20 fantasy points here. And the price at 6,800, very reasonable. Taylor Green's a guy we've kind of been waiting for the dual threat up. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't go that low. I'm sorry. So yes. I was going down to the 7K. That's why I just
no problem. But you can add it. I mean, I think Mayava and Green are going to be the chalky guys here. So yeah, you can provide your thoughts on that range as well here.
No, I do like Mavia. I like him very much. And I like Green. And part of it is that's the highest over-under on the slate. I think they're at 60 something. If they're at 60.5, and both of them have pretty explosive offenses. UNLV, it's called the go-go offense. And, if you haven't watched UNLV, they're fun. They can put the ball in the air. I like UNLV. And Boise State is explosive with their 2 running backs. And Taylor Green is a dual threat. So I think both quarterbacks are in play here.
Yeah, and that game has what I think is the highest total of the day, approaching high 50s, close to 60. So they're both very affordable. And I'm fine, if you want to go double cheap quarterback, like I'm okay playing Finn. Like Miami, Ohio has played really good defense this year, but Toledo clearly the class of the MAC. So I'm okay with Finn. I'm a MAC guy. So you can certainly get some exposure there if you want. But I think going down into the 6Ks will be a popular choice. I mean, even getting down to Bowman, Avion Smith, Gunnar Watson as a cheap QB2, you might see people go cheap with 2 quarterback selections today. Go ahead and round it out. Your thoughts on the lower tier.
I do think Bowman's an interesting pivot play. We have him for less than 10%. Looking at the Vegas game script, Justin, we do expect Texas to win this game. Oklahoma State should have to throw in the second half. They got 3 really nice receivers. I think Bowman is a fascinating pivot play if you want a super flex quarterback. And at 6.1, Justin, you're really not paying, a lot for a quarterback who has 3 touchdown upside if they have to play catch up. So I do like Bowman.
All right. Yeah, I think especially if you're not on Gordon today, I think
Yes.
Bowman is a reasonable option at that price. And you mentioned it, them having to play catch up. There's a chance for him to potentially get there on volume more so today. It's an ugly quarterback slate, weird slate where, going cheaper is fine. And I'm totally fine with some 1 QB lineups today and not playing a QB in your super flex.
Justin, in one of my 3 lineups, I took the quarterback out of the super flex, and I'm a big dual quarterback. And I have to admit, the way the pricing came out, I think DraftKings did a real nice job on this slate. You can avoid the quarterback in the super flex if you want, because there's some really nice options in the same salary range at the other positions.
All right. Totally agree with that as well. Let's go ahead and move to the running back position. I just hinted at Ollie Gordon. Obviously, we know he's been a fantasy stud all year, but the one game where he really struggled lately was the game where they just couldn't get anything going against UCF. They were forced to abandon the run in the second half. They're 2 touchdown underdogs to Texas here today. I mean, I really like Ollie Gordon. I think he's clearly the most, fantasy productive running back on the slate today. But given the matchup and the price at $9K, I'll be underweight on Ollie Gordon. That makes me nervous, but I think it's the right approach today. So your thoughts on, I guess he deserves a conversation by himself here, how to handle Gordon at the top of the running back tier.
Justin, you always have to think about the best running back in college football, no matter the matchups, because you and I have seen enough football. The great running backs can just destroy almost any defense. I have Gordon in one of my 3. I can't completely fade him, but I'm probably going to be under also on ownership because the matchup is tough. Texas, the one thing they do really well on defense is stop the run, right? So we have strength versus strength. And if somehow this game gets out of control, I'm really worried about Gordon getting that the 15 to 20 touches if they fall behind by 14. So I have him on one of 3 lineups today.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that as well. Just a real big decision point on, if you're going cheap, if you're playing 2 quarterbacks and you're going cheap with both, obviously you can probably fit him in. But I have found that I like to save the salary a little bit more at the position today. Or at least just going down. I mean, even going down to the next tier, it still saves you 1,000-ish. Corum has had a tough year, relatively speaking, from a yardage standpoint. I think he scored a touchdown in every game, though, which, that's kind of salvaging his season. The sledding's going to be a little tougher today. Obviously, we know that Iowa defense is pretty good. But Michigan is a big favorite, so the volume should be there. If he finds his way into the end zone, it'll probably be ugly, but Corum's probably going to get his usual numbers. Otherwise, there's a lot of other pivots, particularly the mid-major teams. Jane T. Boone in here, and if you go all the way down to 7K, I think Vidal is probably going to be maybe the most popular running back on the slate. But your thoughts on kind of that next group after Gordon?
You and I have been talking about Corum all year, and we've pretty much stayed away for the most part. And even though this is going to be a slugfest, I do think he'll get 20 touches. We do know what Michigan's going to do. They're going to run the football, right? So he's going to get his 20 touches. The question is, what does he do with them? Do they score 3 rushing touchdowns against Iowa? I mean, it's possible because didn't they wax them pretty hard last year? Or was it the year before? I know they played recently, Michigan and Iowa, and they pretty much pounded them. But I just don't see the ceiling here with Corum against the Hawkeyes. So that worries me. At 8.2, I'm bypassing him. To me, the player that I have in the other two lineups that I don't have Gordon in, it's Ashton Genty. I just love him, Justin. I think he's the most dynamic pass catcher amongst running backs in the nation. If you haven't watched Boise State and you haven't seen this young man play, he is dynamic with the ball in his hands. I think he's twice gone for over 100 yards receiving. Plus, he's gotten over 100 yards a game. I mean, he's the guy I like in this because Boise State's going to put the ball in his hands. We're a little bit limited with George Halani with the ceiling because Halani might score, steal a touchdown here and there. But I like Genty in this. I have him in 2 of my 3 lineups.
Yeah, I think you get a nice little floor ceiling combo there with him. I have him tagged as well as an option here. And again, that game has the high total, close spread. Got to get yourself some exposure there. And if you're not on the passing games, go ahead and throw him into some lineups. The next set of guys, I mean, maybe Edwards for Georgia. Don't love the spot in the price. Same with Jordan for Louisville. They're projected for just 22 points today. I think if you're going below the top tier, you just keep going a little bit further. I mentioned Vidal at 7K. Trey Benson, I think, is a really interesting discussion today. Florida State could lean on the run, particularly if Rodemaker is out, given that I think they'd be starting a freshman, third stringer, if he doesn't play today. And then every time we've seen Tulane on a main slate this year, it seems like Mekhi Hughes has been too cheap for his price is just kind of locked in this middle tier. You got Holani, I think, is getting some buzz as the kind of secondary option for Boise State. All these guys project pretty well on a points per dollar basis, but you got Vidal, Benson, and Hughes are kind of the trio. We've got all 3 of them projected over 20. Do you have a favorite out of that group of 3?
Sure. First, I did look quickly. Michigan beat Iowa. It was 42-3 2 years ago. So, I mean, I just don't imagine them pounding them again that hard. But I just had to look quickly at that one. In this group, I do like Mekhi Hughes. I like this matchup. I know the SMU defense has played well. They're a little bit better than people give them credit for. We know them as an explosive offense, but they're missing their starting quarterback. Preston Stone is out. I have a feeling this game might be a little bit less pass heavy than we are used to. The volume for Mekhi Hughes is just insane, Justin. I do think Vidal might have the higher ceiling because Michael Pratt can steal goal line carries, and they have some pass catchers at Tulane, so they spread the ball around. But I see Hughes with the higher floor. He's been scoring touchdowns like crazy. And if anyone doesn't know, Mekhi Hughes is a true freshman. And he had over 1,200 yards rushing this year. 3 of the last 5 games he's had well over 20 points on DraftKings. The only thing we don't get with Mekhi Hughes, you're looking at 1 or 2 receptions a game, which just limits his ceiling. But, man, look at these attempts, 26, 21, 19, 25, 23. I love the balance. So Mekhi Hughes is my guy today, but I do like Vidal, but I'm going with Hughes there.
Yeah, Hughes, I think, has been safe, all year, obviously, when we've had him available. I think Benson is your GPP play out of this group. I really like the upside here. I mean, yeah, Louisville could stack the box, I guess, dare Florida State to throw, but I just think he's going to get the attempts today. Hopefully he can break a big one. I like him for tournaments a good bit as well.
What do you think about this, Justin? Trey Benson. We have him 23%. He's been my conundrum. I've been studying him. He scored, 3 times last week? What do you think about Trey Benson today? He's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, he's my favorite GPP option of that group there. I think given the potential ceiling, really, I think the floor is low. Like, if Louisville stacks the box and is able to slow him down and maybe get out to a lead. But I think Vidal and Hughes are your cash game guys. But Benson I do like for GPPs as well. All right. The next, I guess we got to talk about the Texas backfield. Andy in our Discord, Smith was posting an update that looks like Baxter is warming up as expected. You just never know. If you played a lot of LJ Johnson last week, like I did for SMU, sometimes in college football, you just never know. But Texas, of course, without their star running back, Jonathan Brooks, but even without him, they still ran for 300 yards as a team last week in a demolition of Texas Tech. CJ Baxter, if he's a full go at 5,600, he's the obvious play of the day. Blue as the kind of third man up would be the play if Baxter sits. How are you handling that Texas situation?
Right now, I have Baxter in 2 of my lineups in the flex position. And I have some alternative. There's options at wide receiver if I have to pivot. I do like Baxter. I can't put him in all 3. But we do know if he's the guy, and anyone who's watched Shark all these years, we know he feeds his running back. I mean, Jonathan Brooks was very good to us, Justin, especially early in the season. We played a lot of him. Last week, Jadon Blue getting the carries. Look how good he was. And look at the numbers. Oklahoma State's not very good against the run. So I'm watching that. I'm hoping Baxter gets the start. I think that's a 12 o'clock kickoff.
It is,
right?
Yeah, it's the first game.
There you go. So you'll know pretty quick if he's going to be the starter. I feel good. All reports. I looked around. I got up at 7 a.m, been looking around. Everything indicates that he's going to play. And that's good news that he's warming up. So I feel good about Baxter today.
Yeah, and again, just stay tuned, as we get closer to kickoff. Obviously, we might know a little bit more. Sometimes these are the situations where you just don't know until the team comes out for the first series, but at least the early kick is better than not knowing, at all. Which brings us to another point. Jace McClellan is questionable for Alabama today as well. Seems like he did not much at all in practice this week. Which is another iffy situation. That's a 4:00 kick for the SEC championship game. And if McClellan is out, you've got Roy Dell Williams that's going to pop as kind of the primary option there for Alabama. That's a tougher situation because it's a later start. The price tags are a lot different in terms of McClellan versus Williams. Alabama coming off that close late, probably shouldn't have won, but they still won game against Auburn. McClellan, 15 for 66. Roydell Williams, 8 for 30 and a touchdown in that game. And Williams has been semi-involved, basically 6, 7, 8 carries every week, even with McClellan healthy. So at 4K, it's not like Roydell Williams tanks your lineup, even if McClellan plays, especially if he's limited to some degree. Are you messing with the Alabama running back situation at all?
I am not right now in my 3 lineups. Williams is on the short list if Baxter doesn't go, but that, like you said, the 4 p.m. kickoff hurts. My challenge with Williams, Justin, there's no real great pivot at 4K. If you put him in and you end up
there's
having,
pretty much nothing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no ease. When I do these injury concerns, I like to have pivot plays available, and I just don't see anything at 4K. So right now, I have Williams on like a watch list, but I don't see myself playing him. I also don't love the matchup. So that's my challenge on that one.
Yeah, it's tougher to go down there. If I'm doing 10, 20, 30, 50 lineups, I'd definitely get a little bit of exposure. If you're just doing a single lineup today, you probably don't want to mess with it. If you're just doing 3 lineups, you probably don't want to mess with it. Or at most, maybe you put him in one of them. So, all right. Anything else at running back? I don't think there's anything else that I'm interested in.
No, I think we covered everyone that I have in all my lineups also today.
All right. We mentioned this being a tricky slate for quarterbacks, and obviously that makes it a bit of a tricky slate for wide receivers as well. Just not a lot of high-end options. Ricky White is going to be the mega chalk. So Brock Bowers is the only guy priced above 7K on DraftKings. And I think he's great for tournaments as well. Again, assuming he's fully healthy, full go. There's quite a few concerns around the Georgia pass catchers today, but Bowers seems to be the safest of the group in terms of status. I mean, you're certainly not playing him in cash games, but seems like something like Ricky White and Xavier Worthy is the clear starting point. Just a weird week where the wide receiver ownership is going to be pretty condensed. Like, are you up there with just play White and Worthy, or for sure at least one of the two and then move on?
Yeah, I think you have to have one of the two in each lineups. I have both of them in two of my three lineups. If we talked about UNLV earlier before, this go-go offense, Ricky White has been spectacular if you haven't watched him this year. In 3 of the last 5 games, Justin, he has scored over 33 DraftKings points. The other 2 games, 25 and 19. I believe he's from Michigan State. He's a transfer from Michigan State. So he went down from that, power 5 to the G5, and he has just dominated with over 1,300 yards this year. I love him in this matchup. I don't think Boise State has the cornerbacks. He's a bigger receiver if you haven't seen him play. I just don't think they have the secondary who can slow him down. That's one of the things that's interesting if you watch a lot of G5. When you get these big receivers, they just don't have the defensive backs who can cover these. Sometimes it's a speed. They don't have the speed back there. Sometimes they don't have the size back there. I think Ricky White easily dominates this. And if you watch a lot of Oklahoma State, and I know I have, and I'm sure you have also because we're watching Ali Gordon, they've been on TV a lot too lately because they're a good team. Man, they can't cover in the secondary. I mean, I just see a couple home run balls here to Xavier White. Now I'm crossing my fingers because if you watch Xavier Worthy, if you watch him, he drops a lot of balls, Justin. So I'm hoping that oh my God, his hands sometimes because let's get 2 or 3 deep balls thrown into him. Hopefully he catches at least one of them. I do like Worthy in this matchup. So I have both of them in 2 of my 3 lineups.
Yeah, it's tough to get away from him. And you look at Ricky White. He is currently on a stretch of 5 straight 100-yard games. So clearly the wide receiver one in that offense. And on a slate that's weak at wide receiver, it's tough to get away from those guys as the top 2. Not that you can't throw a shot at maybe one of the Alabama guys in a GPP. Isaiah Bond would be my favorite, but they're clearly not going to project as well as those 2 guys that we just discussed. The other guy that's come on a lot lately that I think is a clear play here is Brennan Presley. We know Oklahoma State probably going to be playing from behind today. Presley has 24 catches for 279 yards over the last 2 games. Maybe not the most explosive ceiling here, but if he's going to get 12, 14 targets, he's only $5,500. He's another guy that I think projects really well today for any format as kind of a mid-range play. There's some other decent options here in the 5Ks as well. I'll let you have the floor and you can talk about some of the guys you like here.
I do love Presley. We talked about the game script. I do think they're going to throw the football in the second half. Now, the challenge with Oklahoma State, they actually throw the ball. You got Leon Johnson. I think Leon's his first name, if my memory's right. Yep, Leon Johnson. And you have Rashad Owens. So they do spread the ball around. I like Presley the best. He has 24 receptions, I believe, the last 2 weeks. So I like him there. He hasn't scored, so I'm crossing my fingers that he finally gets into the end zone, right? He hasn't scored in the last 4 weeks. So we have a little bit of upside, and we know touchdowns can be fickle. So I'm pretty happy there with Presley. And then you look around. I mean, there's some interest in, is it Brazil? I think it's Chris Brazil of the Tulane wide receiver. The challenge with Tulane is they spread the ball around. I mean, they're very good with that diversified offense. But I'll say one player who I'm interested in that I haven't heard much about, and we have less than 1% ownership. Dominic Lovett. Every time I keep looking at that, and I know you got Brock Bowers, but we don't know if McConkey's back. Lovett had 17.8 DraftKings points. He's got double digits in 4 of the last 5 games. He's only 5,300. I know you had mentioned Carson Beck, and I think you do have to go Beck and Bowers in GPP. But if you did want to go Beck with Lovett in cash games, I'm not against it at all, or in GPP, because Lovett is getting overlooked. I mean, people aren't talking about him. but he's been playing pretty well for the Bulldogs, especially if McConkey's out today.
Yeah, for sure. If McConkey's out, for sure. That's definitely a spot to keep an eye on. And ownership won't be very high there simply because, nobody really knows their status. That's a later afternoon kickoff, so people will just avoid it. You've got the Florida State guys. It's tough to trust them for sure, given the uncertainty at quarterback, but they are cheap. Johnny Wilson's 4,900, Keon Coleman's 5,200. We've had a lot of chatter about the Troy receivers today. They're all cheap. Basically, it's a solid matchup for Troy. They're projected to score close to 30 points. You've got Lewis at 4,700. You've got Barber at 4,400. Seems like he's going to be the popular guy. Do you have a take on getting some exposure to these Troy pass catchers?
I'm good with either one. I have Barber in 2 of my 3 lineups today. You look at the box scores, he had 35 points against Texas State in week 9. In the last 3 games, he's had over 14 DraftKings points. The only reason he didn't get close to 20 last week, he didn't score, but he had scored the other 2 games previous to that. If you're going now, I don't like Vidal and Barber, but if you're going to pivot off Vidal, I like Barber, and I'm okay with either of the 2 receivers if you want to. And we never discuss him. I'm not in on Gunnar Watson. I see people are talking about him because I believe the quarterback is very cheap. It's just not someone I'm looking to target at cash games. But if you really want an interest in kind of pivot, no one's going to probably be in on Gunnar Watson in that Troy Trojan's passing game, other than Barber or the other wide receiver.
Yeah. All right. I am catching up here on some of the YouTube chat items. Mr. Richard says he's playing just 2 lineups today. He's struggling to get the right quarterbacks. Lots of people are in that boat today. It is a tough slate for quarterbacks for sure. Denny Barry says, John, nice sweatshirt, fins up. So you're a UConn guy. What you gotta reconcile the Miami connection here for me, or you just like the shirt?
So, no, I do like the shirt, but you're going to laugh about this. In the 70s, I'm very old. We used to have these like poster kind of, I don't even know, catalogs. And there was a Miami Dolphin poster that I was obsessed with when I was like in 3rd or 4th grade. And I bought it, and it was in my room for years as a kid. So I just gravitated towards Miami. And of course, they had Don Shula. So, I got lucky with Dan Marino, which just, that's how it was easy to go from Don Shula and Dan Marino to loving them. But it was because I was a little kid. I just loved their logo and the Dolphins poster. I know that sounds corny.
So my story with my NFL connection is a little bit now at St. Louis for the Cardinals is more normal. Most of my family's Cardinal fans, and I'm from Western Illinois. So it's not too far, but I'm actually a Ravens fan for NFL. I'm not a diehard fan or anything, but I follow them and root for them. They're kind of my team. But when I was a little kid, so I was born in the 80s. So when I was, 5, 6, 7 years old, getting my first impressions of sports, I liked Bernie Kosar for the Browns for whatever reason. And so I kind of grew up following the Browns, even though I didn't have, so when the Browns moved to Baltimore, I didn't have any specific emotional attachment to the city of Cleveland, right? Because I'm from Illinois. So when the Browns moved out to Baltimore, I just said, okay, well, I'm a Ravens fan now, I guess. And then the first year that they were out there, so I was about maybe 13 at that point, we went out to Baltimore's training camp, and I got a bunch of autographs from the Ravens guys. It was their first year out in Baltimore, and they were pretty accommodating with the fans and stuff. So yeah, I'm a Ravens fan because I was a little kid, grew up liking Bernie Kosar, and then the team moved to Baltimore, and so I just kind of followed them there. I know
they had a great uniform when they first came out with that helmet. That was smoking in the 90s. Like they were avant-garde. I love the Raven helmet. It's a good helmet, but that was cool when they first came out.
Yeah, they had the little shield there. That was I like those. I like a lot of the NFL throwbacks. Pretty cool. The Seahawks wore their throwbacks the other day. Anyway, us old guys, we can appreciate the old NFL throwback stuff. So, all right. And Mr. Richard said he's much older and became a Giants fan when Tarkenton was traded from Minnesota to New York. So everyone's all got their unique stories. It's pretty cool. Our wives, girlfriends, whatever, can all laugh at why we like who we like for sports, but it's part of what makes it fun. All right, I have sidetracked the show. Back on track here. It's okay. It's a short slate, not a whole lot, and we've covered a good chunk of the wide receivers. Is there anybody else on the value spectrum of wide receivers, dart throws, interesting options to consider that maybe are on your brain that we haven't brought up yet?
The only player I thought about, and I looked, but Jaheim Bell at 4.2. But man, with the third string quarterback, I believe I saw he's a freshman, right, Justin?
Yeah.
He's a true freshman, never starts. So I didn't put him into my lineup because I just don't know what to make out of a true freshman quarterback. They might run Benson 25, 30 times. I mean, I just don't know what's going to happen with that passing game.
Yeah, somebody's asking about Javon Tracy for Miami of Ohio. So that offense is a little bit ugly. You can see we don't have any of their pass catchers projected over 6 fantasy points. They're going to try to slug it out as long as they can. He does project as the highest scoring wide receiver for that group, but it's not exactly a ringing endorsement. He only has 21 catches on the year. The good news is that 11 of those have come in the last 2 games. So particularly if they fall behind, I think if you're looking for somebody in that range, it's not the worst play you can make. You've got Jatavion Sanders for Texas as well. Their tight end, probably the best odds to potentially score a touchdown from this group. He's 3,700 if you are looking for a cheap play. All right, time for us to recap the DraftKings slate here, how we usually do that. We throw it back to John for him to talk about his fantastic 4 plays with our lineup HQ tools today. John, who you like here?
All right, if you go to RotoGrinders, you can go into our Optimizer, and I have 4 great players to put in and build your lineups around. I do love the UNLV quarterback, Mavia. I'm all in on him. Jaden Mavia. He's an exciting young player. He has scored over 25 or 23 DraftKings points in 3 of the last 4 games. Highest over under. I feel real good about him in cash game lineups. I mentioned it earlier. Austin Gentry. He's the ceiling floor player at running back. I like him a ton, so he's in there. Right now, I have Baxter. So we are going to be watching. I got my little ticker here. I'm watching a site to see what's up with Baxter. I do have alternatives ready if he does not play, but we're getting better and better news as the morning goes along. So I have CJ Baxter as my other running back. And I think you got to put Ricky White in. I absolutely love him. So the Fantastic 4 today is Mavia at quarterback, Gentry at running back, CJ Baxter in flex, and Ricky White at wide receiver. Plug them into our Optimizer and see what you get, everyone, for options.
All right. There is some discussion about whether you can play, say, Vidal and Barber together for Troy. And I mean, this is going to be up for interpretation to everyone. Like in cash games, you're playing both guys. In GPPs, is this a slate where you want to try to get as much ceiling as possible? Can they both do enough together? At 4,400 is Barber. Can he get his ceiling if Vidal also gets there? Everyone's going to have a different take on that. I'm pretty neutral on it. If I'm doing, 20 lineups, I'd probably put them together in a couple. I wouldn't seek to play them together. I would probably only do that in cash games, but on a shorter slate, it's certainly playable. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you play both of those guys together.
Justin, all right. I have one little, it's not a hard, fast rule, but and in college fantasy football, you can play running backs and wide receivers because it's the scoring. But when I kind of say if it's under 60 points over under, I'm probably going to stay away from the running back wide receiver combo. That's just my kind of DFS. I do agree you can do it in GPPs, but if I'm in cash games, I need that LSU, Alabama, Ohio State kind of offense with, 60 over under and within his touchdown. so both teams are forced to play all their players. That's just my kind of way I would build a lineup. And so GPP, I'm okay. Cash games, I don't think I do because it's only 52.5.
All right. I flipped over to FanDuel. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of added discussion here because for the first time all year, the games are the same. I did see somebody in one of the chats had asked about Avion Smith earlier. That's the Miami of Ohio quarterback. Obviously, I showed that we don't project any of their wide receivers well. I like him a little better on FanDuel where he's only 6,500. I think you can play him there. I do like Isaiah Bond a little better on FanDuel as well, where he is 6K. Otherwise, the plays are still the same. Ricky White, Xavier Worthy, Vidal, Mekhi Hughes, CJ Baxter, the UNLV guys are all there given the projected total of that game. Barber for Troy, a little more expensive on FanDuel, won't be quite as highly owned over there. Presley, Trey Benson, I mean, they're all kind of the same guys. Really not a whole lot of difference in how I'm building my lineups on these slates. I know our good friend Carolina guy had asked in the YouTube chat your favorite quarterback receiver combination on FanDuel. I think that's definitely up in the air today, given the slate. I think Maiva and White are the obvious chalk. I like Beck and Bowers. Ewers and Worthy will be up there as well. You got a favorite quarterback receiver combo today?
Justin, just as soon as you said it, I like Beck and Bowers a ton here. Beck is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's 7th quarterback, much more salary friendly on FanDuel than he is on the DraftKings. Plus, you don't get the 100-yard rushing bonus. So, I mean, we know Beck's not going to run the football, right? So I feel better about Beck on FanDuel. And man, if Bowers plays, Justin, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I love that kind of combo on FanDuel.
All right, so there are our FanDuel plays for today. Let's see. Brian saying, do I have any Bowers exposure today in GPPs? Absolutely. I think he's one of the best GPP plays today on the slate at that price. All right, I think we've covered most of the questions in both the Discord and the YouTube. Obviously, not as many games today and no differences between DraftKings and FanDuel, so a little bit easier to get to. And again, just keep an eye on that news, about Baxter for Texas. That game starts here shortly, so at least hopefully we can react to that one before kick. Stay in touch with our Discord, free to join as long as you're a RotoGrinders member. RotoGrinders.com/Discord. Get in that college football channel. And of course, if you like these shows all year, we brought you one every week for 14 weeks. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate that very much. And it was a pleasure of ours to bring you these shows every Saturday morning. If you're wondering about bowl games, they spread out the bowl games so much. The slates are, one day here, one day there. We don't usually do any live content for those, but we will have you covered over at RotoGrinders. If you are a subscriber to the college football package, we'll make sure we get you some content as needed for the bigger slates on those. So, John, it was great working with you all year and appreciate your assistance every week. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, let's just enjoy the football, and I hope everyone cashes. And Justin, thank you. You've been a great host all season. I had a blast.
Absolutely. Pleasure is mine as well. And of course, as always, thanks to TJ for getting up early and working hard behind the scenes for it. We appreciate his help. Good luck to anyone out there who's got tickets in the college football championship. They've got a big 150K to first college football contest for those that qualified for that over on DraftKings today as well. So appreciate all of you tuning in. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thanks for following along with us all year, and we'll catch you all later.